last year and this year also, as well as the forest and biodiversity are the two burning issues that we have been speaking about, we'll be speaking about it more also. And this session has been actually organized that way so that we actually get to look at how we define forest to rewilding, and cheetah has been chasing us. So there are many other things. Conflicts are anyway widespread. So on the first day, Sunita ji mentioned about this polycrisis or the multiple crises. And that's the new term that it's dictating everything. From geopolitics to our engagement with the environmental sector to everything. And one of the multiple crises that together define the poly crisis is the biodiversity degradation or decline. That has been phenomenal, that usually we don't actually take a very holistic and don't get a structured assessment of the state of physical environment. But of late, we have started looking at it. While on the one side, we humans are looking at the existential threat to human from climate change and other things, we are one of the 81 lakh species who make this planet ecosystem. We are just one of that. And as far as I think evolutionary science tells us, we might be the youngest one as a species. We don't have actually history of more than 3 lakh years. We are one of us. Our 9 predecessors, the other human species, they're all gone with the arrival of us. We might have killed them as well. And so that's all about us. So it's very around us humans. So extinction is something that, and in 2022 also, we had an update on the extinction. Now, you heard about the new age that might be declared next year officially. So I'll just update you on the state of extinctions, exactly which species are going extinct and what is the extent of it. It's actually not a great news. So this term now is a popular operative term. It's called currently we are undergoing the mass extinction, 6th mass extinction. And as it is defined there, you can see, mass extinction is defined as something, it occurs when 75% of all species in the planet collapse in less than 28 lakh years or 2 crore की 3 crore के आसपास साल में, when they actually collapse 75%. And again, in the evolution, million and these years are like a blink. So there have been 5 mass extinction episodes. The last one being that we all popularly know as the one that caused the dinosaurs also vanished. So we actually witnessing the 6th mass extinction. We don't know about the 5. We were not there. The planet never had experienced a species like human, हमारा जो species है. So we are actually currently undergoing the 6th mass extinctions. So what it means? The planet it's very natural for the planet to go through evolution, extinction, then again evolutions, and new species do evolve like us. So it's very natural that way. But the 6th one is different. We'll come to that. The 5 mass extinctions we didn't witness. We only know from the history. 6th one we are witnessing and we are playing a role in it. So at an interval, an average of 100 million or 10 crores साल में, there is an extinction phase lasting for 50,000 to 27-28 लाख साल तक वो extinction चलता है. So keep this in mind. This is again natural. What has happened? So this extinction that we are witnessing is currently the sixth one is different. You might not have millions years now, what scientists are saying. So just to wrap it up, what we know that in these 5 extinctions, since the planet evolved, Earth evolved, 99% of all species that ever existed don't exist anymore. All have gone to extinction. What you see now, it's basically the 1% that's there of the total life that existed in. So why this is first to extinction? In 2019, the Intergovernmental Platform, Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, known as the IPBES, came out with the first assessment of extinction of species in the planet. And it said that 1 million species could go extinct within the next decade. You have already 4 years gone. That's why they call that this extinction phase is unlike any other phases that we saw. And 33 species currently non-threatened. You know, this kutte billi and those who see that they are not considered threatened, they also face extinction. So there is, if you broadly put it, every species, every group of species faces extinctions. That's why also they say that this extinction phase is different. हाँ, वो भी आएंगे हम उस पे. हम तो एक ही है ना अभी, कितना ब्रीडिंग करते हैं दक्ष. वो है एक्चुअली लास्ट एसओई में आप देखेंगे तो एक था चैप्टर फ्यूचर ऑफ ह्यूमंस. हमने बायोलॉजिकली देखा था कि ये ह्यूमंस बायोलॉजिकली देखते हैं कि इस स्पीसीज का क्या होगा जो सब कुछ कर रहा है अभी. उस पे से कुछ इंटरेस्टिंग चीज मिल के आया था. हमारा 9 वेराइटीज थे, स्पीसीज ऑफ ह्यूमन थे. 8 तो जा चुके हैं, अभी हम हैं. हमारा बहुत चर्चा होता है कि इतना नंबर है, लेकिन अभी डिक्लाइन भी हो रहा है. तो उसी में देखना है कि 3 एक्सपर्ट्स ने दिया था अपना टेक कि क्या हो सकता है. ऐसे नहीं कि एक्सटिंक्ट हो जाएंगे, लेकिन एवोल्यूशन चेंजेस आने लगा. तो एनिमल्स विथ स्पाइनल कॉर्ड एक्सटिंक्टेड 35 times greater than the last million years. This is the latest in 2023 में एक स्टडी है जिसका मेंशन आपने इस रिपोर्ट में भी मिलेगा आपको. तो with a spinal cord, most of the animals are going to extinction 35 greater times greater than it was believed. So that's why they call it the extinction is actually very fast. It's happening actually, might be we are just getting to know about it. And there are many species that we have not at all discovered them also. We have not classified them also. And by the time we do that, we say that, okay, we just knew that this existed and it has gone extinct. So many species. Now the last part, scientists are saying that the rate of extinction is so fast, or we are getting to know now that we are not able to comprehend what's happening in the planet. Is it like in cyclone, we usually use a term called rapid intensifications, which the weather experts also say that some cyclone came and within 5 hours it became something else. So a rapid extinction, is it happening? That could be happening as well. So they say that genus extinction in the last 50 years, जितना extinct हुआ है genus extinction 50 साल में, in a normal extinction phase में वो 18,000 साल में जो होना था वो it happened in just 50 years. And 50 years evolution line पे even it's not a blink. जैसे कि ह्यूमन का एग्जिस्टेंस इन दिस प्लानेट, होमोसेपियंस का बोलते हैं कि प्लानेट की एज के हिसाब से 9 सेकेंड्स हुआ है हम यहीं पे आए हैं, प्लानेट का जितना एज है उसी के हिसाब से। तो सोच सकते हैं कि कितना है। ये 4 मैप जो दिखाऊंगा मैं इस रिपोर्ट में है, लेकिन पर्टिकुलरली ए पे देखिए आप, वो जो थोड़ा येलो और जो रेड वाला और इंडिया को देख सकते हैं कि एक्सटिंक्शंस बहुत ज़्यादा है इस पे। तो प्राइमरीली आप ये रिपोर्ट में डिटेल्स भी है इसका सोर्स एंड कहाँ से है और डाटा उस पे, लेकिन ये क्लियरली शो करता है कि पहला वाले में देखिए, बाकी भी है जो सभी में आप देखेंगे तो ग्लोबली तो है ही है, सभी है, लेकिन इंडिया क्लियरली शोइंग दैट we have one of the highest rate of extinction of species in Indian subcontinent also.
तो जहाँ पे ज्यादा आबादी है वहाँ ज्यादा साइबेरिया वगैरह।
हाँ ऐसे भी है, और उसका रीजन भी अभी निकल के आएगा कि ये कौन कर रहा है। If it's not natural, we'll come to that also. तो फिर somebody is doing it, somebody is actually causing it, triggering. That's why it's also different. So ये कुल मिला के ये भी है आपका, वो डिटेल्स होगा इस पे देख लीजिए, लेकिन सभी में आप देखेंगे तो 48% ऑफ ऑल एनिमल स्पीसीज डिक्रीज हो रहा है ओवरऑल। और नीचे आपका आइकन लगा हुआ है, इंसेक्ट से लेकर सब कुछ, कीड़ा से लेकर ऑल एनिमल्स, ऑल बर्ड्स, लैंड, ओशंस, डेजर्ट, एवरीवेयर। Now I'll come to the what we are seeing in the last 1 year. Say currently all the oceans are burning actually in the planet. Severe heat waves are sweeping across oceans, starting from Bay of Bengal to Arabian Sea to everywhere. And this word came marine heat waves that many experts mentioned also. This fairly new word, but that's sweeping actually. And oceans are really interesting. That's popularly कहते हैं because we know more about the surface of Moon and Mars than our oceans floor. We actually don't know anything about the ocean till now. We are yet to actually reach to the bottom of the ocean and to settle down and to look at something. It still makes news like when you go to Mars and Moon. But we know more about the Moon surface and Mars and their structures and everything. But we don't know about oceans. But at the same time, it's the largest ecosystem. One of the last 5 extinction happened actually in the oceans, and that nearly killed almost all species at that point of time, and it's known as the Great Dying. That's why their scientists are now saying that the Great Dying is repeating now in the oceans again. At a particular time when we don't know, it has 95% of all species available for life and hosting 90% of planet total species. And 80% areas we don't know. We have actually not explored also. And 91% of the species not classified. That's why this fear that when you classify, then you just basically think I classified and it doesn't exist anymore. So global warming, if it reaches 4.9 degree by end of this century, 40% of marine genera extinct by in the 2300 and 8% by end of this century. And what we are seeing due to this marine heat waves and the warming of the oceans, like us, that day we discussed and the map shows that outside how the humans would migrate. So these species are also migrating. And they actually 59 kilometers per decade poleward. They are also looking for suitable place. That could be why, if you just bring it down to our lived experience, you must have heard about the many reports saying you are not getting fish that earlier I used to get. Some areas reporting that this fish we never used to get, but we are getting it in large numbers. So these are things happening actually. And currently, the heat waves are sweeping. And there is no, it's not going to end very soon. It's more than a year that oceans are much warmer. Coming to India. India also reports faster species loss than the global average. That's cleared. Many species, and hopefully this year we get an assessment of Indian species as well, saying exactly which are the species currently under extinctions or will go extinct, or some have already gone. And the latest data, which is of 2018-19, India has lost 12% its wild mammals, 19% of its amphibians, and 3% of its birds in 50 years. And there might be the new report that we are expecting. We'll just update it. And that updated data might dramatically change these figures because they are re-evaluating their earlier things also. Now, why it is different? So I quickly run, I'm running out of time. Unlike the 5 extinctions which happened in the planet, this one is different for the simple reason that all the other extinctions, the 5 were caused by natural events and natural regions. This one is caused by one species, that's Homo sapiens or we. That established, that's why it's different. Just look at it. We migrated out of a climate event, we bred now 8 billion, and we have everything altering and also pushing everybody else into extinction. So this one is different for the one unique reason is that one species is actually causing, and that humans. And humans now responsible for 83% of all wild mammals and 50% of all plants decline, that established by that IPBES extinction assessment. Human responsible for altering 75% of land-based environment. It means that all the land that we have altered. That's why I said that in 123 years, we altered the planet itself. And now come to the point that's called the tipping point also. Biodiversity declines greatly exceeds levels of increase. Nearly 50% animal population on way to extinction. So there is no regeneration of biodiversity. The rate of regeneration is lower than the decline rate or the way we degrade. So there is imbalance that's on the face. Now come to this. Humans not just the reason for extinction of species. We are not just triggering extinctions. We are actually deciding which one to survive and strive. I am the planet now. I decide whether you will live here or not also. If I decide you live here, then I also decide whether you will thrive or not. So who are these species that humans are deciding to thrive, to live and thrive? Now look at it. Mammals, out of the total mammals, actually 60% are livestock. Because we want livestock. 36% are pigs. We want to eat and grow. I decide I will eat you, so I'll make you thrive. You are my food. And just 4% are wild mammals. So the whole composition has changed. Of the total birds now in the planet, 70% are poultry chickens. The chickens that we had and Bibasot, and that actually now they make it actually 70% of the total bird population in the planet, which we grow. Biomass of humans and livestock now surpass that of 70% of the total number of individuals or the total number of species? No, total birds in the planet. Just imagine total birds in the planet. Here you go out and you see 60 types of birds. There are millions types of birds. Of the total birds, this is what actually the first assessment brought out, giving us the first insight into how human is created. And that was basically based on another 100+ research papers, which looked at individuals. And biomass of human and livestock now surpass that of wild mammals altogether. So that's all about weight. Humans are also obese, so okay. Nature usually gives us 18 identified services or contributions to us. But given the state of the biodiversity, now not able to, in 80% of these services, the nature is not able to provide. And last year, again, this came in a major study by the United Nations University. The world inched closer to 6 interconnected tipping points. It means one tipping points in one factor which is a link or will have a ripple effect in other things. One of them is the extinction. So there are 6, and in this report you will find all the 6 of them have been depicted in maps. So what does a tipping point means? Tipping point means that once we reach to that point, there is no return back, and we don't know what would happen. Remember, every existence in this planet has a reason and a rationale. Whether आप एक चींटी हो या बड़े एलिफेंट हो, सबका अपना रोल होता है. One of them goes, we suffer. So, just to wrap it up, what does this means? Look at this. Last extinction that we had, it took nearly 2 crore या 200 lakh साल to recover from that extinction and to get back to life as we see it. If current extinction actually, at this rate, if we go, it will take actually 8 lakh human generations to actually get back to some form of life as we see it. So this is what yesterday Sunita ji mentioned. Anthropocene, that's again a big, Anthropocene is basically the age of humans. We are actually formally going to declare the Anthropocene or the age of humans. Scientists are working on it. Soon they will declare. And I'm sure all of us will live to the declarations. It will come very soon. So how do they do it? This also different. This is the only age which is named after a species, that is Homo sapiens. And what is the mascot of this age, new age? To declare a new age, you have some parameters. If you are saying it's the age of humans, that you must have parameters where it should show that what are the human imprints that I will take into consideration to declare this as the age of humans. There are many competing parameters. One is plastic. Humans created this, and it's everywhere. Other is nuclear dust. Nuclear bombs, the power human created. This one is the also a biggest one. You may say that this is a living one. How come humans have created this? Just to give you a biological thing, the broiler chicken that we eat with so much of fondness, and this is one species that has been entirely engineered by humans. It's a living, definitely, but it doesn't have any link, genetic link to its ancestors. It has been engineered completely. The meat, the feeder, how it sleeps, how it moves, everything has been engineered so that we get our meat. That's why they say that this is the most competitive parameter to declare Anthropocene. And this is where I end giving you the state of the planet. So very soon, welcome to the Anthropocene and age of humans. And extinctions before we discover. And coming back to the human, what would be the future of humans? Last, I mentioned about that report. It said that yes, humans will not go. We might survive like the broiler chicken. We can, if we can engineer this much, we can engineer ourselves also. So that's one of the things. So with this now, I request Ms. Bibha Basne, just give us a state of things, because she will give a state of things on what the world is doing on the biodiversity and also all that we just spoke. So, Biba. And Biba, you have.
just need 5 minutes. Don't worry.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so Sukanya is putting on my slides and I will start as soon as we have them. Yes, yes. This. Okay, so after hearing about extinction and what we are doing to biodiversity, I'm going to talk about what the world is trying to do to actually prevent all this. And I will start with my slides. So the first question that we have to answer is, what's the world doing for biodiversity? It's a very important question. But before we actually answer this question, we need to understand the context behind this question. In 1992, when the Earth Summit happened, 3 conventions came out of it. We have been talking about these during the meeting quite a bit. These were the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, and the Convention on Biological Diversity. So I would be talking mainly about Convention on Biological Diversity, where a lot of things are actually being done to ensure there's a change in face as such in this convention. So why this became very important is, despite the fact that in 1992, the convention was put in place and it was entered into force in 1993, in 2019, the IPBES report showed that 1 million species of the 8 million species that we know about are threatened with extinction. So obviously we were not doing things right and something had to change. That was the same time when we realized that the Aichi targets that had been set in 2010 and were supposed to be reached by 2020, we failed to meet any of those. So things were really in a very bad situation when the CBD had to come up with their new strategic plan for the next 10 years. So in 2022, finally, after delays of 3 to 4 years, because it was supposed to come in 2020, and the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework actually came into being. And this had 23 targets, which had to be met by 2030. And it had 4 overall goals that had to be met by, 2050. So at this stage, this is what stands. And over the last year, since December 2022, lots of meetings have happened across the world to figure out how the system should be put in place. So for example, in this, the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework has a few different change tacks a little bit. For example, it decided that the indigenous communities, indigenous people and local communities, IPLCs, would be given a bigger role in protecting biodiversity. They were mentioned in 7 of the 23 targets that were put in place. There was a target, number-based target, specifically that every year at least 200 billion US dollars would be collected, found to protect biodiversity. There was a specific target that was talked about a lot, the 30 by 30 target, under which 30% of land, water, and sea has to be protected by 2030. So there was also a decision to share benefits from the use of digital sequence information, which is genetic material and and proteins and other components of an animal or a plant. And through the use of this, if some company or someone is generating money, so that person has to share benefits with the community. So also there were there were some measures indicators put in place to ensure that we would be able to check out the progress and not go the Aichi target way. So just a minute, I think. So I will talk about a couple of targets, just a few of the targets, main targets. So the 30 by 30 target has been very contentious since the time it was put in place by the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People, which has more than 100 countries as members. So the target is really very ambitious because it says that 30% of land, sea and waterways, inland water would be protected. This is when we failed to meet the Aichi targets, which was just 17% of land and water and 10% of the sea. Even at this point in 2022, we have just somewhere around 16% of the land which is protected, land and inland water, and just around 8% of oceans are unprotected. So it's really an ambitious target that we have put ourselves to achieve. Even if we add a new concept to this, that is the other effective area-based conservation measures, the OECMs, which can be private land or that can be any other kind of land, gaucher areas also can be included in that. So these areas, even when we add these to the protected areas, even then the situation is not really much better. So the problem is that it's most likely that the areas that are controlled by the IPLCs, they would be included into the protected areas. That would mean that they would have lesser access to these areas. They would not be able to take anything from those areas. And we have examples in India also where we have seen this happen. So this has been called as a kind of land grab by the rich countries, because the biodiverse areas are generally inhabited by poor people. So this could take away, as I said, land and livelihood from as much as 300 million people. And these are mostly tribals and indigenous people. So this increase in protected areas also requires a lot of money. So there was an estimate just before COP15 of the CBD took place. There was an estimate that this increase would require as more than 100 to nearly 100 and 200 billion annually for this purpose. This is nearly as much as what is being which is the target for financial funds that we need to actually get together by 2030 every year. So the problem is also that the existing protected areas are not really protected. They are not being protected effectively, and there is a lot of decrease in biodiversity even in these protected areas. So then what is the purpose of these protected areas? That becomes very difficult. So that these things are all being grappled with. These are still being talked about. How we will actually meet these targets? This is all part of a lot of discussions that are going on in the world. So this map shows this was brought out before the COP15 was put in place. This shows areas where the land is likely to be available for protection. And if you can see, India does not have any land for this purpose. So we would have a lot of problem in meeting the target. The other big point that I would like to talk about is access and benefit sharing. So CBD had three pillars that were put in place when it was conceived. So one was conservation of biodiversity. The other two were sustainable use of biodiversity and ensuring that there's sharing of benefits that emerge from the use of biodiversity. So we had done a assessment last year on what is the status of access and benefit sharing in the country. So we found that it's not actually working well across the world. So we had taken examples from different countries in Africa and Latin America, and we did not find many examples where the communities managed to get any benefits from the knowledge or the biodiversity that they shared. There was one or two examples that we came across. But some examples showed that there is potential there. But yes, it's not very effective so far. So we took assessed the database that has been created by CBD, the ABS Clearinghouse database, and we found that in November 2022, only 25 member countries had actually given out these certificates to people who were accessing this biodiversity from their country. A total of only some 4,344 certificates had been issued, out of which most were issued by India. India was also the first one to issue the certificate, and after that we still have issued the maximum certificates. But the problem is only some 1,000 or 1,200 of these certificates were issued for the use of biodiversity for commercial purposes, which means that benefits accrued from there would not be shared with the if there would be, first of all, no benefits per se, there would be papers and research studies that would have been carried out, or some kind of research that would have been carried out. And these, as there are no benefits out of this, so they would not be shared with the people who have given the knowledge and the biodiversity. So this is again, this is a representation of the database and the data that came out of it in terms of which countries have given out the certificates the most. And the situation is really sad because other countries, just 25, and only some of them have just given 1, 2, or 3 certificates. So sustainable use of biodiversity is not happening, which is why the third pillar of CBD is also not being met. The requirements are not being met. So over the years, most of the talk that has happened has been on how do we find the funds that we need to protect biodiversity. As I mentioned, one of the targets is to generate at least $200 billion every year for this purpose. So a specific fund has been created for this purpose. But again, it has very little money as of now. It just has around 200 million instead of billion for the purpose. And the working is actually going to start somewhere around COP16, which is scheduled in October of this year. So it's only after that the funds we would know how much fund has been generated and who would get it, and how it would be distributed. One of the things that has happened, one of the discussions that happened through the year was also that IPLCs would be providing the funds directly to ensure that they can protect their own land and they can actually carry out their own projects. So that would also resolve the issue around the increasing the area under protection. So they have a lot of land, they control a lot of land, and though their lands are really very biodiverse even now. So they are getting them getting the money directly would be a very helpful thing, but we have to see how it actually works out. So as we can see, everything is at this moment, 1 year since the framework was put in place, is just work in progress. Lots and lots of meetings have happened, but nothing concrete has come out per se. And we would get to know more about which direction we are going, and whether we would be able to prevent extinctions, and whether we would be able to gain any benefits from the biodiversity would be clearer nearer the COP16, which is in a few months from now. Thank you.
The biodiversity boards, or how is the fund?
So, to the indigenous people?
Yeah.
I think it would be through the board, but as of now, we don't know because we have not reached that phase. So this discussion has not happened as yet.
He also has some questions.
Can I make an observation, please, at this stage?
Yeah, please, before we just go for the one thing we can take up.
Yeah, right. Sorry. Yeah, this is about the 30% global target in terms of land under protection. And in the past, I have pointed out that it is ridiculous to expect that every country should have greater than 30% plus should achieve this target. This really would depend on the capacity of the country. And the primary factor would be the land to people ratio. Is there enough land available in your country? I mean, to give an example, India is a country with 1.5 billion people and 3.2 million square kilometers. Canada is a country with 25 million people or 30 million people, and they have 3 times the area of India. Therefore, these are targets that should be set at the global level. And countries that have low populations and much greater amount of land available should actually contribute a much larger proportion of this. And countries like India just cannot afford to set aside 30% in terms of a protected area or whatever. The second point that I have observation that I made in the past is that the definition of a protected area varies. The global definition of a protected area is only a national park and a sanctuary. And the concept of a reserve forest, for instance, is not there. But in India, for instance, the total area under the control of the forest department is already about 20%, including reserve forests. So all those are protected in some form or the other. So all this should be taken into consideration when we are talking about the effective land under protection in the country. And the 30% target should be at the global level. Countries that have few people, large amount of land should have the responsibility to contribute a much larger share of their land in terms of protection. Thank you.
Thank you. May I request, yeah, can we take it now or? Yeah, okay, yeah.
Just a question about, it's very clear that the changing climate is contributing to the impact in the biodiversity status all over the world. Now, there are these talks around that whether we are having 2 COPs now, 2 independent COPs, one climate COP, one is biodiversity COP. So there have been some talks around the world whether there will be more stronger linkage within the 2 COPs, simply because the climate change is impacting the biodiversity. And even in the last COP, we have seen it has been discussed, but discussed generally in a kind of a transient manner. So what Richard and you are what you feel of solidarity is here, that should there be more stronger linkage between the 2 COPs, the climate COP, and it will also cut down the cost to a large extent. So what's your thought on that?
Definitely, there should be linkages, but Jayanto, you're an old hand at UN negotiations. Once 2 bureaucracies are set up, those bureaucracies would not like to be merged or talk to each other. The concern is, and you will hear it again when we talk about Trishant, my colleague, is going to present to you the voluntary carbon market and what is happening and can happen at scale with planting trees for carbon offsets. Those trees for carbon offsets could really end up with also destroying biodiversity. So you have huge concerns in terms of, what the 2 groups should be speaking to each other. But I don't see that happening enough. I don't see it happening at all in the future, just because UN doesn't work like that. I mean, there are now two groups. There are two technical groups as well. There is IPCC and then there is IBES. I think these groups should be, at least the scientists should have a conversation. I can only tell you that when I'm on a global jury to give awards, and I had recommended both IPCC, but also IBES to give an award. So I'd said, give it to both biodiversity scientists as well as climate scientists, because it's time they understood that there is a conversation that needs to happen. I don't see it happening enough.
Actually, Sunita, in fact, the AR6 report hardly dealt with the biodiversity should have been. So absolutely kind of go with you that should more stronger talks, at least at the scientist level, if not the negotiator level, at least the scientist level.
Good. So,
There's been one report, I'll point out, there's been one joint report of IPBES and IPCC on climate change and biodiversity. It came out about 2 years ago.
Okay. Thanks, Sukumar. That's good news. We should work on that.
Actually,
Yes.
Last year, ZSI, which keep account of the faunal biodiversity of India, they were gaga over the 5,000 new species they discovered, but they don't have any account of the loss of species in India. So do you have any idea what was the number?
See, the number that I quoted, that's the latest from the government of India. But as I said, that they are actually working on, we expect this year to give two key figures. Basically, look at the assessment of the extinctions itself. And also this new species, those are being discovered, whether they actually already under extinction or not also. So we expect this time India will have its first assessment, comprehensive assessment of extinctions, because this also feed into the global assessment.
Let's hope it gets published. So I think
Yes.
that's the other part of the story. But any other questions for Richard and Vibha? Otherwise, I will move to the next section. Yes, please, go ahead, both of you.
What we can say about any species?
Yeah,
In situ versus ex situ,
Yeah.
what's happening?
Vibha. I think
Go ahead. You looked at all the gene banks in India, and
The conservation is happening, like, you're looking for an example of this. See, gene banks, as man said, gene banks are there, that is ex situ. But in situ, I guess.
I think in situ is becoming more and more the question of benefit sharing as well. And then the question of borrowing, taking from the gene bank and developing it. One of the things that I hope Vibha in this coming year will do, we've been very keen, and maybe all of you should really look at it. What is the state of gene banks? Because we haven't really focused on that. And we did a story, she did a very detailed investigation, which she talked about briefly, but because it's 2 years out of date, we wanted to review it, that what's happening to the benefit sharing in India, because all these companies are required to pay for the knowledge that they take from indigenous communities. Payment is even being made, but the defunct bodies, the state bodies, the state biodiversity boards, in most cases, they don't even know what to do with the money. So I think those are things now to review more carefully and to look at, because the biodiversity work has really reached, has gone under the table. Climate is much more discussed. Biodiversity as an issue is not discussed anymore. And I think we need a new narrative, new discussions, new stories on it to understand what's happening on the ground. We did a story looking at the experience with biodiversity registers and just how debased it's become. I mean, instead of going to the local people, when Madhav had conceptualized the biodiversity registers, the idea was that you would get local community to document its knowledge. Today, in most cases, it is an external consultant who goes in there and has no clue about the biodiversity and makes a register. And then you get a stamp, as register is made, it's kept. So I think these are things to come back to, and there are a lot of issues that were brought in biodiversity, and we today should really get an idea, what is the state of art, and then what needs to be done further. It's something that Vibha has been a little out of operation for a year. She's going to come back at force on all these issues. So she's going to come back. Don't worry. Next time she'll have better answers. So that last.
Richard, you had mentioned about marine heating and the vanishing species in the oceans. And of course, the missing fish on the pallet. The regular fish is missing from the plate. So that aspect, actually, Roxy's is the marine heat waves thing. But I suppose we should probably push him to get, working with some fishery scientists.
Again, the same silo.
Yeah.
Roxy is incredible on the knowledge on the heating of the oceans.
Correct.
But it is marine scientists and fishery scientists and fishermen who will really tell you the loss of species. And the trouble is there is no conversation together. And I think that's the biggest crisis today, where I see a lot more weather scientists are getting more importance, which is good. But I think now we need to make sure that the issues of species and the impact of climate change on species is understood better. And I think that's also part of a challenge as we move ahead. Yes, last. Yes.
Madam, last Forest Act, revised Act, but already that जो हो रहा है कि ट्राइबल पीपल जो है ये डिस्प्लेस हो जाते हैं और कॉर्पोरेट जो लॉबी है ये लोग ये फॉरेस्ट अपना कर लेते हैं। तो कैसे हम लोग इसके साथ लड़ाई करेंगे, कैसे हम लोग इसको समाधान निकलेंगे कि ट्राइबल को रहना चाहिए उधर?
देखिए, जैसे विभा ने कहा और सुकुमार ने भी कहा, ये जो ग्लोबल पॉलिटिक्स है बायोडाइवर्सिटी की 30x30 नीड्स टू बी नाउ डिफरेंशिएटेड कि कहाँ होगा, क्योंकि सबसे बड़ा सवाल ये निकल के आ रहा है कि जो आप जमीन की बात करते हैं, जंगल की बात करते हैं आज और कहते हैं कि इसका प्रोटेक्शन होना चाहिए 30x30 के लिए, वो जंगल आज आपके आदिवासी के घर हैं। और उन घरों को कैसे बचाएंगे, उन घर को कैसे उनको हक मिलेगा, ये सवाल है। इंडिया में अभी भी कुछ हद तक वो हक बचे हुए हैं, कुछ हद तक, मगर अफ्रीका और भी लैटिन अमेरिका में ये चीजें बहुत जल्दी जा रही हैं। और इसीलिए ये आई थिंक इन चीजों के बारे में लिखना बहुत जरूरी है, क्योंकि 30x30 तो एक्सेप्ट हो गया, 30x30 बड़ा अच्छा भी लगता है। 30x30 एक और स्लोगन मिल गया पूरी दुनिया को, 30% by 2030। बट उसकी जब आप डेप्थ में जाएं तो यही हो जाता है, किसके हाँ वो 30% है, किसकी जमीन प्रोटेक्ट होगी और उनके क्या हक बनते हैं, क्या उनको बेनिफिट मिलेगा कि नहीं मिलेगा। तो ये मुझे लगता है बायोडाइवर्सिटी रिजीम के अंदर सवाल आने बहुत जरूरी है।
बहुत डिस्कशन में चला रहा है, उससे भी पहले 2018 से चलता रहा है, पर इसका सोल्यूशन कुछ है नहीं। जो सीबीडी ने आंसर निकाला वो यही निकाला है कि उनको ही पैसे दे देंगे, वही लोग खुद बचा लें अपने एरिया को।
कहाँ मिलता है उनको पैसा?
कैसे उनके पास जाएगा, कितना जाएगा और वो क्या कर सकेंगे और कौन लोग
चलो
करेंगे?
पीपल, अब 11 बज गए। हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल, नो दिस इज अ वेरी बिग इशू, बिकॉज जब वो 30x30 का डिक्लेरेशन हुआ, मेरा पहला सवाल विभाग को था कि मैप आउट क्यों 30x30 का मतलब क्या होता है, हमारे कहाँ है वो जमीन, किसकी जमीन है? And I think that's an issue that is never being raised in the politics, because biodiversity has become a highly conservation-centric, technocratic issue. We need to bring the politics back. And I think that's why Sukumar plays a very big role and others play a role in helping us to make sure these issues are raised globally. But Richard, you come and sit. Vibha, thank you very much. I really need to move to the next session. Ankila, please come. Ravi, please come. And Devujate, please come. We will begin the next session. So the next session is a panel discussion, which actually we introduced for the Mallus over here. Okay. When we were designing this program, the whole elephant thing had become so big in Kerala. And if you remember, 2 years ago when we had done the AAD, we actually had a full session on the human-animal conflict. So this year we had no plans of doing a separate session. But then with the flashpoint in Kerala on elephant human conflict, we thought, and thank you very much for agreeing to be part of the panel, we actually have done a jugaad where we asked the people who were in any case coming, we said, let's have a conversation on this. And Sukumar very kindly agreed to be part of this conversation. So I am not going to say very much. I just want to ask all the panelists to begin with short, possibly 5-minute points in terms of how do you see the crisis and the solution. The issue is human-animal conflict, and it is growing across the country. It is not just a Kerala issue, not just an elephant issue. It is an issue which is now across the country. What then is the way ahead? What can be done? Farmers I know in Wayanad and others have tried everything from electric fences to everything. You would have seen in our campus, we have done everything to protect ourselves from monkeys. We are failing. Okay? So what then is the way ahead? So Sukumar, I'm going to call on you first to give us
Sunita, I think you should call on me last because, as a professor, if I start speaking, then I won't give others a chance.
No, my dear, I'm a very tough chair. You know me.
Okay.
But I want you to begin because you have the longest experience in this in terms of particularly elephants. And the elephant-human conflict now, which has reached such a flashpoint in the Western Ghats. What is it that we can do? I mean, Karnataka today is paying the compensation for somebody who's killed in Kerala. I mean, that's bizarre, but that we won't even get into. That's the politics of the day. But Sukumar, please.
Okay. I largely talk about elephants, but we can broaden the conversation to other wildlife later if necessary. I have been studying, observing elephant-human conflicts for 45 years now, since 1979. And whenever, I think there are 2 or 3 different dimensions that we need to be conscious of. The first is that whenever you have a dialogue on elephant-human conflicts, immediately, the immediate response is that humans have intruded into the forest, we have fragmented the habitat has been degraded, and so on and so forth. And therefore, the elephants are out to take revenge and they're coming out and raiding crops and killing people. Okay. Now, obviously, when there is a loss of habitat, obviously, when there is loss of habitat means that the elephants do not have a home, as it happened in Assam in the Sonitpur area where hundreds of square kilometers of forest were cut down during the 1990s, which is, of course, the root cause of which is a social problem, the border problem in Assam. Elephants will go out and raid crops if cropland replaces forest land. If there is a high degree of fragmentation, then obviously the elephants will have easier access to cropland, agricultural land, and so on. But on the other hand, you have another dimension, the other side of the coin when it comes to elephant-human conflicts or more broadly wildlife-human conflicts. And that is, what do we know about the intrinsic biology of a given species? That should also guide us when we talk about the solutions to conflict. And unfortunately, that has not been given enough credence, it's not been given enough attention, and so on. And for instance, the nutritional hypothesis that even if elephants have enough to feed in the forest, a section of them, a proportion of them, some individuals will still come out and raid crops and kill people. Okay, we need to recognize that. Simply because The crops outside are abundant, they are more palatable, they are more nutritious, and therefore certain elephants will take the risks in order to come out and meet their demands. And I can give you any number of examples of this across the country, where you have a very large forest area, you have a very small elephant population, and still those elephants are coming out. They're not satisfied with what they have, when they have a huge area of forest and water and everything. The second is intrinsic biological factors like the male of the species coming into, being much more prone, much greater propensity to come into conflict with agriculture, as with male elephants, as with the males of what I call polygynous species and so on and so forth. This is something that's playing out. And today what's playing out in Wayanad is essentially this, something I pointed out more than 40 years ago, that essentially a lot of the conflicts are because of males coming out and raiding crops and killing people, going far and wide and, in search of more nutritious food for intrinsic biological reasons. And therefore, once you control this problem, once you manage the male segment of the population, you are going to solve at least a good part of the conflict, maybe 50, 60, 70, 80% of the conflict can be contained. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that family groups do not come out and raid crops. It's happening now in places like central India, where I think there are more complex issues involved. 30 years ago, I pointed out that the big dispersal of elephants that took place had a climate angle to it. Let me explain. About 50 elephants from Hosur in Tamil Nadu in 1983 marched off into Andhra Pradesh and never came back. The trigger for that was the El Nino of 1982, which created drought-like conditions. And the elephants were looking for new pastures, fresh pastures. And I feel that the climatic angle to large-scale elephant dispersal and, going and colonizing new areas, looking for more opportunities, which is what is happening in central India today. Elephants from Jharkhand and Odisha have expanded their range. They are marching westward. They're going into Chhattisgarh, into Madhya Pradesh, into Maharashtra. And that's where the conflict is very, very intense. Now, I'll just take a couple of minutes more. Now, what is happening is when Project Elephant was first designed, conceived of during the early 90s, late 80s and early 90s, and I had the privilege of being a part of the very first task force, which designed this. We had a certain focus. The focus was on what I call sensible landscape scale planning. And all the elephant reserves, we brought in the concept of viable landscapes that can hold viable populations, demographically viable populations of elephants. And that's what we have to be satisfied with. There will always be elephants that are, roaming around, outside the major forest areas that are in conflict. And we have to sacrifice them in some form or the other. When I say sacrifice them, I don't mean go and shoot them or kill them, but we may have to take it into captivity. Or we may have to have other more interventionist type of management, which unfortunately, today, there is a certain fuzziness in thinking that is set in, which is very, very dangerous. And I actually attribute the recent escalation in conflicts. The last year, we have, in the last 45 years of records that I have kept, the number of people killed by wild elephants in the country has reached a peak. It has reached a peak of 600 people being killed. It was 125 when I began my research in the early 1980s. So it is more than quadrupled. Okay, last year, 600, and it's growing. Because a certain kind of fuzziness has set in. We need to bring the focus back to the elephant landscape, the elephant reserve. And there is a judicial precedent for this with the Karnataka Elephant Task Force, where 10 years ago, we gave a report to the Karnataka High Court where we said, design you have a zonation, a concept of a zonation for our elephant areas, elephant regions in the country. You have elephant conservation zones, which may hold 80 or 90% or even 95% of the elephant population of a given state. These are intact forest areas. They are largely protected areas and so on and so forth. Now, within the larger elephant landscape, you can have elephant-human interaction or interface zone, where inevitably we have settlements, we have tribal settlements, we have agriculture, and people have to coexist with the elephants. And we need to devise ways of managing these populations and preventing them from making a big impact on the lives and livelihoods of people. But we stuck our necks out and we said there have to be elephant exclusion zones. So there are certain areas of the country or in a given state where elephants have no place. And that has unfortunately not been taken seriously, in spite of the Karnataka High Court endorsing this scientific management plan. And today, 5% of our population, elephant population, causes 80–90% of the conflict and the damage. And therefore, we need to have a more, what I call a sensible approach. We need to, what actually bothers me over the years and having observed conflicts, the lack of sensitivity towards the common man, the people. By a larger section of conservationists, biologists, scientists, whomever it is. And that actually saddens me very much, because I think people are coming up with harebrained schemes which just will not work at all. And you need to really go back to the founding principles of Project Elephant that very clearly said that elephant-human conflict is a serious challenge that will grow if not nipped in the bud, and we have to deal with it sensibly, scientifically, including, if necessary, removing elephants from certain parts of the country in order to save lives and livelihoods. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
No, brilliant. Thank you. I think you've set you very clear in terms of both the question of management, which is something that we don't talk about enough. But Ravi, I'm going to turn to you. Ravi Chelam is one of the people who has, I don't think there's anyone in this country who knows conservation from my point of view as well as he does, and has looked at it from all sides, from different ecosystems. And so from your point of view, Ravi, the conflict is real today. How would you see the way ahead? Sukumar has clearly said, management, discuss, look at the male, and also look at the question of viability of what is the viable population that any landscape can take. Landscape is the second issue. Viability within a landscape is another issue. And then if it is if it exceeds the viability number, discuss it, deal with it. Ravi.
Thanks, Sunita. You kind of set me up to fail by saying all these things. Anyway, from my point of view, I think Sukumar has set the stage very nicely, and on an exceptional situation, I think I will agree largely with what he has said today, but there are points I disagree with. I will begin with by saying language that we use, and that specifically is to all of you media people. When you report on these issues, the language that you use is very, very important. Simple things, saying animals are straying. No animal strays. Animals do not need traffic signs and signals to tell them where they need to go. Then killer elephant, terrorist elephant. These are absolutely unacceptable language. And I say this to fellow ecologists also. If we view it as conflict, our response and solution is to, again, prevent conflict. The fact of the matter is fairly significant. In fact, majority of elephants, 30–40% of our tigers, maybe more than 50% of our leopards, and probably 80% of our snow leopards, more than 50% of our lions, and I could go on, do not live within protected areas. They are living in unprotected areas. It could be reserved forest, it could be agricultural landscape, it could be revenue land. In India, coexistence is the norm. Coexistence doesn't mean hugging animals or loving animals, or, coexistence is sharing space and time with these animals. Majority of the cases, people don't even know or observe these animals passing by. And this happens even in urban situations. We today have leopards passing through several built-up habitats, and people don't know, but for CCTV cameras, that these leopards are there. The exception is conflict. Given the frequency of potential for conflict, the question to ask is, how come our conflict levels are really so low, and not ask the question why the conflict levels are so high? This is in no way to belittle the tragedy that each conflict actually befalls the individual and the family. I'm trying to set it in context of time and space and the human population. We have 1.4 billion people dealing with these thousands of large mammals outside protected areas. That's, I think, so the language is very important because that then tells us how we view it, how we will respond. The other context I want to say is, you can't continue to develop in this mindless, nature destructive mode and expect the rest of nature to kind of behave in a way that is not causing problems for us. We believe in widespread causing of problems. There will have to be some payback. It's unfortunate that the payback is often felt by the poorer, weaker sections of society, the more isolated sections of society, while the decisions and the so-called benefits of our development model are enjoyed by the more powerful and richer sections of society. So unless you really change the development paradigm, don't expect these conflicts within brackets to reduce. Barriers is a big push. It's been a big push for several decades now of various kinds. Trenches, electric fences, railroad line fences, even concrete walls. In India, where people need access to resources, however big the barrier might be, people will find ways to break the barrier, and elephants increasingly are also finding ways to break the barriers. To me, the amount of money we put into barriers is much better spent in investing in people, making their lives better, making their economic futures better, because barriers haven't worked. Barriers have been an unmitigated failure. A good CAG audit over the years should really look at the amount of money we spent on barriers and the payback that we've got for it. The other mess up, and I think Sukumar referred to it in the lack of science and ecology in how we manage. We view a species as if they don't have personalities, especially with elephants, long-lived, extremely intelligent animals. There is, of course, a category of the population which causes the most problem. There are also individual, clearly identified elephants who cause the problem. 80–90% of the population do not cause problems. Even large adult males have found ways, as much as we have to adapt and evolve to their presence, they have learned to adapt and live with people. You see them walking through markets, not causing any problem. But what do? We capture, we relocate. It again creates problem. We capture, we relocate again. And that kind of, imagine somebody coming and keeping every few weeks, capturing you, moving to one city or the other. What will be your state of mind? And how do you expect an animal to know the novel landscape into which it is released? How does it know who the neighbors are? How does it know where to go find resources? These are, I mean, you at least can go to a restaurant and buy some food. Elephants can't do that. We are doing that level of management and expecting these animals to remain calm and behave in a manner that's acceptable to us. Maybe my time is out. So that's okay.
No, just we'll come back with after the questions. This is just a stage setting, and then I want questions from people. Ankila. Ankila is somebody who has really, I mean, we've known each other for, I think, good 30 years.
You gave me my first job.
How old we are. And very, very knowledgeable. So, Ankila, how do you weigh into this?
Well, big disclaimer is that I'm a plant biologist, not an animal person. So with people like Sukumar and Ravi, they're much more knowledgeable about the behavior and biology of animals. But I think having worked in the BR Hills in Karnataka for last more than 20 years, and worked very, very closely with tribal communities who live in this forest, I've come to appreciate and respect the way they have coexisted with the animals around them. So I think I want to just throw in this point that, obviously the media highlights the conflict and what needs to. I mean, it's tragic every time there is conflict and human lives are lost, or there is destruction. But that tends to focus on the sort of dichotomous negative interactions that humans and animals have. But in this country, I think we have a very long tradition of coexistence, which is it's a much broader way of looking at human-animal interactions. And I don't mean coexistence as something that's all good. as Ravi said, it doesn't mean hugging animals, but it means, there's a long history and tradition of living together or sharing space with animals. And I think in a country with our kind of population, we couldn't have the kind of large animal populations that we do if it weren't for this long cultural tradition we have. So I think there's a range of human-animal interactions that we need to also highlight, and not just the conflict. And as Ravi also said, there are, part of it is animal biology, as Sukumar highlighted. Part of it is individual animal temperaments. Animals are not out to attack humans all the time. And this wonderful work in Valparai that the Nature Conservation Foundation has done, which is, this matrix of natural and managed areas with very large animal and especially elephant populations, just being able to be aware of where the animals are and to avoid them at certain times has drastically reduced the kinds of conflicts that were occurring. So I think we need to think of things as, a gradient of, coexistence to, areas where we don't, where we need to exclude animals for obvious reasons, but I think not view it entirely in this dichotomous fashion.
Good. Okay, Devadatta, let me bring you in now. I mean, what you've heard from, there's slightly, the views are similar, but they're also from different perspectives. I mean, what Ankila and Ravi are really saying is, don't view the conflict. There's also coexistence, and don't highlight, I mean, that's not the only story in town, but there is a story in town of conflict. So how do you handle the conflict story? By just calling it coexistence, the conflict is not going to go away. So how do you handle that from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think this human-wildlife conflict, when we talk about it, we are talking about the symptoms, like, the effect of it. Now, when we talk about human-wildlife conflict, we also talk about the wildlife habitats. And PA, Dr. Kumar was saying that, I think that he said that reserve forest area also, they're protected. But see, the problem is these PAs and RFs are maintained at very different scale. So if you see PAs, especially the PAs which are iconic, like Kaziranga Corbett, very militarized, very protected. But if you go to other PAs, there are hardly any forest staff. Sorry. One example I want to give you, there's a Palamu Tiger Reserve, one of the first tiger reserve declared in Jharkhand, now Jharkhand. There was not a single, till today, there's not a single tiger. And there was a report, there was only one forest guard for the entire tiger reserve. It's a very huge tiger reserve. These are the issues. And other issues, the training. See, we see the issues inside the protected areas. There is no management, no monitoring in most of the PAs. Also outside protected areas. This is where I work. So the training the forest officers, this forest rangers and the forest guard they receive is very different from the forest staff which receive training for the wildlife. There's actually in the forest department, there are three clearly administrative division. One is the wildlife division, one is the territorial division, one is the social policy division. And I think entire life they spend in the one division only. And most of the conflicts that happen in areas outside PS. There's a video I shared on Twitter, there's 5 policemen who they wanted to rescue a leopard and they used some beds to catch a leopard. Leopard died. So where is the awareness? Where is the training of the staff to do all this thing? PS protected areas, now we have 6% of the protected areas. Most of them are conservation reserve declared last 10, 12 years. And 50% of the wild species in India, as Ravi Chalam sir said, and 1/3 tiger, as per NTCA, they live outside protected areas. And see, the problem is in India, if you compare with Africa and other countries, PAs are very small, very, very small. There are protected areas which are hardly 1 square kilometer, 2 square kilometer protected areas. Now the concept was PA network. Okay. And when it was we declared the protected areas, 1972, when this Wildlife Protection Act came, this impact on land use, this kind of infrastructure we have, the kind of roads we have, those were not the issues that time. But the focus was hunting. And still the animal had the pathways to move. I will want to give one more example. Kaziranga is in UNESCO World Heritage Site, we all know, and there is yearly floods. Every year there's floods. So it is a natural phenomenon. And all the animals, they evolved with the flood. And there's a Karbi Anglong hill, which is on the other side of the road. There's a road in between. what happens is every year during rain, the animals move to the higher side on the Karbi Anglong Hills, which is under Autonomous Council of Karbi Anglong, and Assam department manages the Kaziranga. When you have road in between, now on road, you also want to have dhabas, you also have restaurant, there, truck terminals, everything is there. There are speed, like, people, it's a highway. So, so this is I gave you example to explain you the infrastructure and this kind of mismanagement of thing, training, awareness. And lastly, I said, one thing I want to say, now there's a focus on plantations. Like, everywhere we're doing plantation, we want to have a world record of plantations. I think right now, today, plantations are the greatest threat to the wildlife habitat. Animals are moving out of the forest, especially in the areas outside protected areas. We are damaging all the grassland, all the open forests, which is the habitat of the herbivores, all the carnivores. They move out of the forest in search of food. These are very questions we have to understand. Issues inside protected areas, issues outside protected areas.
I only know that the elephants don't live in the forest at the back, and it's a good forest. Okay, they live in the temple because everybody feeds them bananas, and then they come here and destroy our poppy flowers. Okay, so sorry. He's saying the more plantations that are coming up, the more the animals don't live in the plantations. They don't have no food in the plantation, so they move then to habitats. That's the point they were making.
I will explain also.
I want to open it up to questions. This was supposed to be, Richard, I'm going to bring you in at the end. Okay? Okay. So you want to talk about animal conflict? No, I know that. I'm going to bring you in at the end. So to help me to wrap up, I want questions right now. I want the Mallus to start. This is Mallu land questions. Yes, please. I will, and also Jharkhand land questions. I want people who are really in the thick of the conflict, to discuss this.
Okay, hello. And I think that this is first time in my memory that man-animal conflict has turned to be a heated election issue in Kerala. Yes. Okay. In Lok Sabha election, it will be a heated issue at least in 2 or 3 constituencies. I have 2 questions. One, there is a school of thought that this Wayanad region, forest region, has in the capacity to contain this kind of number of elephants. There is a thought that their number should be controlled. Is it scientifically possible? This is the first question. Another matter is that once I visited this Attapadi tribal region, there is a frequent wild elephant attack. There I found that in some section, in some area, tribal women are experimenting certain plants. What they are saying that plants are producing some smells, and that smell warding off wild elephants. They are saying that it's not scientifically proven. There is one, I don't know what is its English name, Arikumbal tomara, the name of the plant. They believe that suppose they are planting that particular Arikumbal tomara, then elephants are not at all coming. That's their belief. It's not scientifically proved, but they are saying that it's coming to all other lands, but it's not at all coming to their land. Is it a solution? Experimenting certain kind of plants. These are my questions.
So I have 2 questions. Yes, Mr. Dar. I want elephant people first to talk, and then we'll talk.
From all the presentation, the impression that I get is that this whole idea of coexistence and ecological balance is a sublimation of that, the Darwinian principle of survival of the fittest, that humans are at the top of the food chain and nobody must challenge this. And we're not admitting this, but if I were to talk about other life forms, like for instance, we are happy that the smallpox virus was wiped out, TB has been controlled or wiped out. But we don't mind eliminating those species. And we're not even calling them species because we don't even consider them as life forms in many ways. So I think, and that this holds with the other mammals. I mean, we are more concerned about mammals and all other species of animals, that they should be there as long as they don't challenge us at the top of the food chain. We will arrange them, we will genetically engineer them so that they will conform to our standard, to our moral standard. And that moral standard is also, I think, quite hypocritical in many ways, because I think the world is basically amoral. That if you just allow everything to live as they do, then I don't think there's nothing as moral. The COVID virus would have wiped us off. Maybe someday there will be something else which is coming up. Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Teddy, and then yes, I have, both of you, then I have at the back. Can everyone take the questions and then I'm going to come back because let people ask first. Yes.
Mine is a generic question. Anybody can answer. Like, should we have a conservation compensation? Because the states which are responsible for protecting forests or animals also have mineral reserves. And when we look towards development, having industries, it means that we have to destroy our forest reserves, we have to disturb the animals, and we have to bring out the mineral wealth as well. But what does the state get if we are protecting them? Like if Jharkhand is protecting the forest areas and it's not allowing industries to come up because it will disturb the elephant habitat, then should the state be compensated for that, for protecting the animals?
Yes. I will take both of them. Don't worry.
I have a question for Mr. Ravi. He was speaking about some usage of words in media whenever leopard or tiger enters into the city. So my question is there any a style sheet of words to cover such events? And most of the times, many people are unaware that there is a authority called NTCA. And we have some NTCA guidelines to capture a leopard or tiger. But people are unaware about that guidelines. Even forest department don't intend to sensitize the people about that. So what it happens always, we as a readers or audience, we always target forest department saying that they are not doing something, they are not capturing this leopard or something like that. And we media people also highlight the same thing. But we fail to sensitize people how to behave during such circumstances.
Don't worry, I have all the names on my list. I just want before we
Sunita, could you please speak into the mic because I can't hear you.
Sorry, Sukumar. हाँ, आपने माइक ले लिया तो इसका मतलब नहीं है कि मैंने आपको राइट दे दिया बोलने का. आप जरा रुकिए. ओके. एक मिनट. 3 सवाल उठाए गए हैं. मैं 3 सवालों का 3 लोगों से आंसर चाहती हूँ. उसके बाद I will open it up again. Sukumar, first question from Kerala.
Yeah.
Question is there any basis, scientific basis to say in Wayanad, this question specific for Wayanad, where it's become a political issue, that there is an overpopulation and that there needs to be a management system? Number one to you, then I will come to you, and then I will come to you. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. In fact, that's, I think, a very good question, because if you really look at elephant populations over the past 40 to 50 years, the elephant population in the country overall, and certainly in southern India, has increased, as shown by whatever population estimations, good, bad, or ugly. You can argue over the methods.
Sorry, my dear, you can't see this room. There is I have 15 people wanting to ask questions. So I want you to keep your answer a bit short and focus on the Wayanad issue and focus on a specific answer on that. Sorry to put you.
So there has been a big increase in elephant populations in South India, including in Wayanad. I'll just give you the example of 2017 population estimation, where 2016 was a drought year. And 2017, a very high density of elephants was recorded in Wayanad, which is the western side of the Western Ghats. My suspicion is that elephants are increasingly driven by, looking for areas with greater amounts of moisture. So there could be a climatic angle to it. I don't know. But definitely in 2017 population estimation, very high density of, extremely high density of elephants in Wayanad. I'll stop.
Okay, so let me do one thing. Sorry, people, because if I keep intersecting, I feel I will not let the questions. So just make notes of the questions. And then I also know them in my mind. I will come back. Yes, I have the 2 of you at the back. Then I have you. Then I have Rishika at the back. And then I have Jayanto. Yes. And then I have you.
I just want to shift the entire discussion now to the northeast part of the country. Now the northeast part of the country has the second highest elephant population in the country. Now there's interestingly, there is a project called the Lower Subansiri Hydel project. and there is this report by Wildlife Institute of India, which says that 1,158 kilometers of elephant habitat have already been destroyed by the NHPC dam infrastructure. And secondly, when the project actually starts going in, that the entire stretch of elephants will actually be washed away. So that is actually a consequence of the large projects in the north, which will have a direct impact on the elephants.
Very good point. Very good point. Next to you. Yes.
Hello. So my question is that we've been mulling immunocontraception for elephant population control. How viable is it? And where are we at in terms of implementing it, or what are the
Population
implications
control
of
elephant population
Yes,
control.
yes, yeah.
How viable is it and
Yeah,
how effective
yeah.
has it been? Okay. हाँ, बिल्कुल. लखिंदर आपके पीछे. Then I'll come to the last row.
मैं ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ कि हम लोग एनिमल और ह्यूमन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं. तो जनरली जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है शिकारियों के हैं या आम लोगों के हैं, लेकिन जब स्टेट जानवरों को मरवाता है, जैसे बिहार में नील गायों को मरवाने के लिए शिकारी बुलाए जाते हैं तेलंगाना से, और उसी शिकारी को फिर बुलाया गया एक बाघ को मरवाने के लिए कि वो आदमखोर हो गया था. और कुत्तों का तो खैर है ही, लेकिन नील गाय को मरवाने के लिए 100 200 नील गाय एक दिन में आके वो शूट करता है. हैदराबाद का शिकारी है. तो इसको लेके क्या समझ है?
सवाल नहीं, बहुत अच्छा सवाल. चलिए पीछे तीन लोग हैं पीछे लास्ट रो में.
My name is Anup. So, like for the past 20 years, I have been hearing about the human-elephant conflict, and has like this human-animal or elephant conflict, have they ever become the political issue, like including in Chhattisgarh, to which place I belong in Madhya Pradesh also. Like in Chhattisgarh, 74 people died in 2023, and in Madhya Pradesh, I suppose 12 to 13 people died. But they have never become political issue, even during the election period when human-elephant conflicts, we are taking the death toll.
आप केरला से नहीं है ना? केरला में लिटरेसी लेवल भी बहुत हाई है. हर आदमी, हर प्लेस इज नॉट इन माय कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी. Kerala is Kerala, but definitely the political issue. Why doesn't it become a political issue in other parts of the country where the conflict and the number of deaths are even higher? Yes.
मेरा सवाल ड्यू टू क्लाइमेट चेंज वाइल्ड एनिमल्स की जो फूड हैबिट्स चेंज हो रही हैं इसको लेकर के है. एक एग्जांपल है कि ड्यूरिंग द सेकंड वेव ऑफ कोविड माउंट आबू में एक स्लॉथ बियर ने बंदर को शिकार किया और लिटरली उसका वीडियो था, पेड़ से ऐसे गिरा करके उसको हंट किया, एक चढ़ा, दो बियर्स ने उसको नीचे से और लिटरली मार के उसको खा गए. ये माउंट आबू के फॉरेस्ट का अब तक के हिस्ट्री का एक ही एग्जांपल है जो स्लॉथ बियर ने इस तरह से हंट किया हो बंदर को. तो क्या क्लाइमेट चेंज का असर है इस तरह की चीजें? क्योंकि स्लॉथ बियर कभी हंट नहीं करता जितनी मेरी नॉलेज है. और खासकर माउंट आबू के फॉरेस्ट में तो पहला इंसिडेंट है ऐसा. और सेकंड वेव में क्योंकि माउंट आबू में होटल इंडस्ट्री बहुत ज्यादा है तो बियर जो है रात में होटल का जो वेस्ट है उसको खाने के लिए आते हैं. तो सेकंड वेव में जो था वो फूड अवेलेबिलिटी नहीं थी होटल वाली, तो शायद हो सकता है जंगल में फूड की कमी हो, इसकी वजह से उन्होंने वो शिकार किया हो. तो इस दो चीजें मुझे समझनी है कि क्या हमारे जंगलों में खाने की कमी है और क्लाइमेट चेंज का इस पे कितना असर है इस चीज का.
वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन. हाँ, yes, I'll come to you.
Hi, this question is for Sukumar. So he was speaking about creating elephant zones and also about population. So my question is, okay, first of all, elephants are long-ranging species. So what zones will you create and until where will you create? Because they will migrate. They are a long migratory species. But my larger question is, we can keep talking about population explosion. We can keep talking about management, but unless there are forests which are protected, they will keep migrating out unless you don't divert, unless you keep diverting. Even one elephant will be too much. Even one tiger will be too much if there are no forests left. So we are not talking enough about diversions. And I pose this question to Sukumar because he is a member of the Standing Committee of the National Board for Wildlife. in my 6 years of reporting on wildlife, I haven't seen one project rejected by the national board. Every project is cleared. So if we keep diverting protected areas, if we keep diverting now with Forest Conservation Amendment, we're even diverting deemed forests.
Your point is taken.
Yeah.
Fine. Look at the number of hands. I just don't know how to handle this. First you. पहले जो पुराने हाथ थे मैं थोड़ा सा क्लियर करूं, फिर मैं नए हाथ लूंगी, ठीक है? पहले यहाँ और फिर जयंतो, that completes my old hands. Then I will come to the new hands, okay? But you can imagine, Sukumar, Ravi, Ankila, how much interest there is. And I'm so glad we did this session. Okay?
In Odisha, it is an everyday affair कि जो हाथी और वो माने ह्यूमन एंड जो टस्कर की जो लड़ाई होता है, जो फाइट होता है, तो उसको ये लिखते हैं कि फाइट बिटवीन ह्यूमन एंड टस्कर, जो हाथी मणि से लड़ाई कहते हैं उन लोग, जो कि एवरीडे का अफेयर होता है। और जो मैं जो रहता हूँ कंधमाल की तरफ है, वहाँ पर कॉरिडोर भी है, एलिफेंट का कॉरिडोर है, लेकिन द पीपल आर प्रोटेस्टिंग कि जो वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी डिक्लेयर किया है, 80-90 विलेजेस विल बी डिस्प्लेस्ड। तो ये लोग बोलते हैं कि जो आप लोग जो डिक्लेयर करते हैं, रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट डिक्लेयर करते हैं, उसी के कारण ही ये सब प्रॉब्लम होता है। तो क्या सोल्यूशन हो सकता है कि वो जो रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट तो ऐसे ही है, वो तो खत्म हो रहा है, सिर्फ नाम मात्र है कि रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट बोल के। तो इसीलिए ये जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट के लिए जो खेती होती है आदिवासियों की, बहुत छोटा छोटा जमीन है उनका, तो वो लाइवलीहुड भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है। बहुत छोटा छोटा मतलब एक छोटा छोटा पैचेस होता है और ये नष्ट कर देते हैं, खत्म कर देते हैं वो लोग। और हमने लांजीगढ़ जो कलाहंडी का एरिया है, उधर भी मैंने गया था और आई हैव सीन कि हंड्रेड्स ऑफ एकर्स ऑफ मैंगो प्लांटेशन इज देयर, जो कि हाइब्रिड वाला है, वो लाखों का कारोबार होता है, लेकिन वो 5-10 दिन में पूरा एकदम खत्म कर देते हैं ये लोग। और टोटली एकदम पूरा जो फार्मर्स वगैरह होते हैं, एकदम पूरा वो माने अफेक्टेड होते हैं। इवन दे हैव नो मनी टू पे रीपे। सो व्हाट इज द सॉल्यूशन?
So very question is, what is the solution? Jayanto. Good. Okay.
Very, very quickly, my question is for Professor Shukumar and anybody in the panel to respond. I would like to refer two government decisions which were taken earlier, disbanded, and then again being recently taken. First one is that in 2011, Planning Commission decided to merge Project Elephant and Project Tiger. And then the then Wildlife Board countered it and that been disbanded. But recently, I think in last June, again, that same proposal has been formalized. So what's the take on that? Number one. Number two, something has been referred, contraception of elephants in West Bengal and Orissa being planned in 2014-15. And after that, Supreme Court came into the picture and kind of stopped it. But again, government of West Bengal is contemplating, because they are saying that the number of elephants in North Bengal is huge now. They can't control. So they are now thinking about, again, contraception. And several big shot NGOs are supporting it. So what's the thought on that?
So population control issue was asked before. Okay, now let me get back in control for 2 minutes. First you, then Sudha, then Piche Gaurav. हाँ, ठीक है. Then Aditya at the end, फिर ठीक है आप. अब कोई हाथ मत उठाइएगा इसके बाद, please.
I am Varghese Thomas, working with Malayalam Manorama in Kerala. I have a frequent traveler to the Periyar Tiger Reserve, and we have enough elephants on the road. We photograph them. They become more friendly to us. They never attack us. We have bus services, Kerala transport services inside the national park. So what they are doing is, the problem is invasive species are growing into the forest in a big way. And in Munnar, Kerala Forest Department is doing, for the last 1 year, their restoration work has started, and they have good impact on that. So you should do, we can do a story even on that, even in that bit. In last 2 years back, I have done a story that a researcher from Los Angeles came in Wayanad and lived with the tribals there for 3 months. And they have seen the coexistence in a big way. We did not understand, the modern people, we did not understand. Even they, when they see the elephant 1 kilometer away, they will sense the smell and tell them, Eda, don't come to our way. Nyangada vazhikku varalle, nee maaripo. in a pathetic voice, they say. Then the elephant sensitizes. Even the Raja Vembala, you know, the King Cobra understands the communication of the tribals, and we are missing all these things. So we have to take a recop of it. I have a good suggestion from that friend. The media coverage should start a protocol for reporting. That is an essential thing. India government or I don't know who will put it. And the population control is a good suggestion. That's all. Thank
No,
you.
not a good suggestion. We need to understand how effective is it. And that's a question for Sukumar, and we will come back to it. So sorry.
The other side is I have covered Veerappan's forest years back. And he was actually, he's a controller or in that sense. Okay. It's a job.
Yeah. What kind of population control is the issue? Okay. So I have the two of you now, and then I'm going to go back to, yes, Scott. And then I have you. Yes.
I'm from Maharashtra, and Maharashtra Forest Department, they did not have elephant history. And last few years, elephants from Karnataka, they are entering in Konkan region, and Telangana, they are elephant pack is entering from Telangana to Gadchiroli. People are not aware about how to treat them. Even Forest Department was surprised when they entered first time. And now people are working, so they are giving suggestion that introduce elephant project over there. So is it viable, or is it, can we say this migration has become resident, elephants have become resident of these places?
Okay. Sudha ko piche de dijiye. I'll come back to you. You'll be the last.
My question to Professor Sukumar. Sir, there was this proposal to merge the tiger and the elephant corridor.
That is what Jayanto just asked.
Similar,
Jayanto asked the same thing.
So what
So,
is the status of that?
what
The
is the
second thing is there any, this can come from anybody, is there any updation on the SOP or the protocol on when an elephant or any wild animal should be tranquilized when it gets into this conflict zone? Because there's a lot of human population which is also, you know, the stress levels of the animal, the people, everybody is very high. So in the Wayanad first incident, there was a delay even in tranquilization, which actually led to the they said dehydration. There were so many other issues in the postmortem report, but effectively, is there an updation, or is it that a same old SOP?
Okay, good. Okay, no, first I have got,
Sunita,
yes.
sorry, there are so many
Just-
questions. This will
sorry.
go on till about 1 o'clock.
No,
or
no,
2
this
o'clock
is
or
just
so.
finishing. Last two questions, and then I'm going to give first you, and then all the panelists a chance to properly respond. So yes, पीछे, पहले पीछे. पहले गौरव को, फिर आदित्य को, फिर मैडम को, and फिर आप last हैं. So I've got 4 questions, and that's it. Okay? Yes.
My question is for Sukumar sir. How do you address human-wildlife conflict when serious concerns raised by government bodies like NTCA are disregarded by NBWL? We have a recent example. In January, NBWL cleared a big dam project in Dudhwa-Lagga Tiger Corridor, despite concerns raised by NTCA. And we have been seeing several such examples.
So there's one large issue of habitat fragmentation. Okay, that's, I think, a larger issue which has been raised by many of you. Then there are many other issues as well, but and I will recount them at the end. But Aditya.
Hello, just a very quick question on the fringe areas of these parks and protected areas. I think there's a huge assault that's happening there with tourism. Is there some kind of an assessment about the carrying capacity of these places for setting up tourism? Because this is one industry, and especially wildlife tourism is set to explode. Already there is very little that is being and can be enforced on the ground. There seems to be a huge confusion about who's to enforce the rules on noise and water and those kinds of pollution. And it's completely out of control in many parts of the country. So just wanted some idea.
Good question. Yes. नहीं, माइक ले लीजिए पहले.
I'm from Kashmir, so we had recently a report on that. These bears are, like you talked about this, they're in search of nutritious food. We got a report that these bears come to the plains and have the biryanis around these tourism areas. So now the bear like to have a biryani and the chips. So how come is this adventure tourism, like should we promote it or not? Because biryani is now up to by bear ko bhi dena hai, leopard ko bhi dena hai.
बहुत अच्छा. Yes, last. And you're absolutely the last, because then I will ask everyone, all the panelists to give responses.
So I have a question related to Maharashtra only, because normally we have seen the elephants come from Tillari corridor, and they do damage to sugarcane is a major crop in Kolhapur, in that region where they come from. There is no insurance policies, there is no policy measures as such to have a fair compensation. So what do you say on it? And do we need to have a strengthen in terms foolproof corridor, so can the passage of this animal can take place smoothly, so they cannot deviate into other parts?
Okay, I think you've all heard, the panelists have all heard this whole range of questions. I'm going to start with Sukumar, then each one of you take your time, but not too much, to answer the questions as you feel are some things that you want to answer. But largely the issues that have been raised is habitat fragmentation, the issue of politics, the issue of population control, the issue of protocol, the issue of, so there are many issues. Merger of Project Tiger. So each one of you have taken notes. Please take them. Sukumar.
Yeah. Thank you, Sunita. I'll leave at 12 o'clock for something, for another meeting. So I'll try to answer a subset of some of these questions. Okay. Many of these questions can be telescoped into what I think is bringing in more strongly the concept of landscape scale conservation planning. Where you have protected areas, you have non-forest areas, you have reserve forests, you have agriculture, settlement, linear infrastructure, etc., etc. And, we need to give much, much greater importance to what I call moving away from the PA approach to more sustainable landscape scale planning. This is a huge, huge topic worthy of a separate discussion, so I will not go into that at this stage. And I think a lot of the problems when it comes to managing elephant populations can also be sorted out, or the conflicts minimized by taking a landscape approach. Now, I'm not going to get into great amount of detail about National Board for Wildlife Standing Committee and so on, because that's not the purpose of this meeting. But I'll just make a pertinent point. There's something about Lower Subansiri. When you talk about landscapes, the landscapes in southern India, by and large, all this is relative, mind you. Okay, they're by and large in relatively good shape, compared to landscapes that are in many other parts of the country. Now, one thing that I have constantly been emphasizing in the standing committee, whenever projects come up in the Himalayan foothills, is the need to maintain the contiguity of habitat along the Himalayan foothills in an east-west direction. This includes northern West Bengal, it includes Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, and of course adjoining countries, Bhutan in that place. In the Lower Subansiri, in fact, the report of Wildlife Institute of India that was referred to was actually at my insistence that when I went for the site inspection, I realized that all earlier committees, okay, and I will not name people, what those committees said and so on, had completely overlooked the corridor function of prior to reaching Lower Subansiri. It's about a 2-kilometer stretch. It's a very, very vital link for a forested area, both to the west and to the east. It involves both Arunachal and Assam. And I've consistently said that whatever else is secured, procured, whatever else it is, in the catchment areas of Lower Subansiri, I'm not getting into the Lower Subansiri, this happened 20 or 30 years ago, is that particular corridor function has to be maintained. And WIA was commissioned to do that, and they have given their report. And by and large, the Standing Committee and the NBWL has actually come on board that. Now, the second the point I would briefly mention is about the use of contraceptives. What I would say is that it is rather unfortunate that we have had to on fairly trivial grounds, even an experimentation on use of immunocontraceptives has been halted by the highest court in the country. Immunocontraception has been tried in many parts of Africa. It will not have applicability across the entire region of the country, but it can have application to certain populations which are growing, which are in high levels of conflict with people. Because where do you begin? If from 15,000 elephants, we have reached 30,000 elephants and you're going to reach 60,000 elephants, then you're going to have more and more conflicts. So we have to be satisfied with capping also the elephant population at some level or the other. And therefore, I personally feel that the government, the ministry, I have, on a one-to-one basis, I have told them they should take steps to try to get the stay vacated. At least we can experiment with captive animals. What works, what does not work, and then move on to limited, targeted, focused application of this contraception in certain populations. It will not work everywhere. The third part was about administrative merger of Tiger and project. I have absolutely no idea. Members of the standing committee are not consulted on this matter. So I have absolutely no idea why it happened. Please talk to the Ministry of Environment about it. The fourth is about all that I will say in that context is that Tiger has always had the lion's share of the money, the budget for conservation. And the elephant has suffered all these years. 1/10 of the total budget of Project Tiger over several decades, decade after decade. But the problems are tenfold. Therefore, you need to have orders of magnitude higher levels of support for managing elephant populations. I'll stop at that. The Tilari Dam, the elephants going to Maharashtra, is part of the broader phenomena of elephants expanding their range for various reasons, including population increase, including invasive plants coming into forest areas, elephants expanding their populations, dispersing and so on and so forth. Maharashtra by itself, 5 or 6 elephants, it's not viable. It can be conserved only in conjunction with the population of Belgaum, the northern Karnataka area. That's where the landscape scale planning comes in. We are trying to bring that. In fact, just I'm going to leave this, go to a Western Ghats meeting on Maharashtra, where we have made the plea that southern part, the Tilari Dam, should be part of the eco-sensitive area of the Western Ghats in order to maintain contiguity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sukumar. I know you have to go, and thank you so much for joining us on this. It was a real privilege because I do think that the words, your experience, your knowledge, and also very clear. Sukumar is saying something different today. And I think that's a message that I'm hearing for the first time. So it's clearly an evolution, a growth of his thinking, his ideas. And I'm really grateful that you shared it with us. But with the level of interest here, it tells me we really do need many more interactions on this. So I will leave you, and we have very able panelists here who are going to take forward many of the issues that have also been raised.
Thank you, Sunita. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you.
Ravi, I'll give you mine now.
I'll take up from where Sukumar left regarding the Maharashtra thing, and there was a specific question about corridors. I have actually a figure in my talk later. I'll talk to it. Wildlife corridors and the corridors in our building are two completely different things. We should, first of all, not think of wildlife corridors like what our built corridors are. They're seldom straight line. They're seldom continuous, and they're seldom the shortest distance between two places. Okay? And there are no marking on the ground telling the elephant this is the corridor and that is not the corridor.
So, the minister had a meeting on all this, and he said that our signboards laga denge.
इसीलिए whatever the proper word in Hindi is, that respectable gentleman is the minister and I am not. Anyway, so you can't say that the animal has to stick to the corridor. We have brought the term corridor to indicate a passage, but it is not, as I said, straight line, narrow, well-defined. But most animals, 99% of the time, will not move into habitats which is not suitable to them because they are risk averse. They don't like getting into cities. Let me make this very, very clear. Okay? What is there in there for the city? Hot tarmac. They're burning. Okay. But first was on culling, population control.
Tell us about it. What is your view on that? Because what we've heard from Sukumar is today something different, which I have not at least understood until now. He is talking about defining viable populations after making the landscapes, but defining viable populations, and beyond viability, talk about culling. He has spoken about that.
Culling as well as immunocontraception.
Yes.
Yesterday, a lot of people came up to me and said, what do you have to say about the leopard report that's been released? The government after government has been throwing numbers at us. When I got interested in wildlife, this is around the mid-70s. I would have been about 15 years old. I mean, I also got taken up. So 1812 tigers, right? Not 11, not 13. 1,812 tigers.
0.5.
Oh. How the hell do you know this? I can bet 3 of us go around this campus to count people. 3 of us will get different estimates. How can you go into any forest and come out with such accurate thing? For a long time, there was this myth of pug marks. And with pug marks, not only could you count, you could tell the age, the gender, and what it was doing, falana tikana. I mean, you want to tell stories, you tell stories. Sariska had 22 tigers, 32 tigers one day. Next day, it had 0 tigers. How is that possible? Somebody tell me. So then they said, we will do this, whatever. Even this, yes, there is a lot of science, but how it is implemented, what is the quality of the data it comes, what is the analysis it is done, is still a very black boxy kind of situation. If you're in the government, you get access to it, but you can't talk about it.
We have another session after this. I want you to focus today.
No, on the culling. On the culling. Okay, the long and short of it is, the numbers are unreliable. Nobody can tell you there is underpopulation, overpopulation, population is stable or population is growing. So to then decide on unreliable numbers to control the population would not be correct. Now, there was the other point of certain plants warding off elephants. There are methods, like sometimes they say burn chili and oil and that acrid smoke can keep animals off. But
we tried it here.
And did it work?
No way.
It can work. It can work for 1 week or 2 weeks. Elephants learn. I can show you videos. We don't have time today. Elephants have learned to use their tusks to break electric fences. Okay, they know their tusks don't conduct electricity. So they have learned to break electric fences. So they learn. They're long-lived. They're intelligent. They will learn. So this plant warding off, I don't know. I mean, it's possible that the location of that particular person's field is in an unsuitable habitat for elephants, so the elephants are not coming. And so by association, he or she has come to the conclusion, it's the plants that is keeping off the elephants. The third thing was about conservation compensation. What does the state get? It is very unfortunate that all our thinking and dealings is being monetized. If the habitat is in place, is it only in rupees that you measure the benefits? What about the ecological benefits? What about the hydrological benefits? What about the climate benefits? What about the carbon benefits? What about the million other things local communities get from the forest? We don't put a price to it because we don't have the capacity to even measure it. Forget, you don't even have a capacity to recognize it. First recognize, then try and find a way of monetization. My problem with putting value on all of this is then the highest bidder gets it always. If you say this is $100 billion, the Ambani or Adani will come with $101 million and take it away. So don't look everything in a narrow monetary sense. Over and above all of that, I think all of us have some spiritual capacity, and natural habitats inspire, provide, mental health benefits is just amazing. For people living in urban, it's recorded, psychologists have recorded it now. But for local people living there, imagine the trauma when you move them outside of that.
Sorry, I am going to have to...
Style sheet. No, I am not a journalist. I'm happy to work with journalism schools and guide them on it. But don't expect me to come up with a style sheet. I know exactly what is not to be said, but I'm...
Journalism, what leads, leads. Okay? Conflict leads. You can't call it coexistence. It'll never lead. Okay? So you have to also understand what journalism is about. But within that, help us to find ways in which we can reflect the reality and we can reflect the complexity.
Absolutely.
Happy
Happy to. Subansari project, here's a contraception we dealt with. Bihar Nilgai culling. Who asked that question?
Yes.
Yeah. So the Wildlife Protection Act allows the Chief Wildlife Warden absolute rights to decide whatever is the right thing to do in the context of his state or her state. The law empowers the Chief Wildlife Warden. It is an unfortunate fact that 99% of the occasions, Chief Wildlife Wardens don't exercise that authority, especially when it comes to dealing with the real problems of local people. Almost always the wildlife gets the benefit of the doubt rather than local people. In Nilgai, it is assumed that if there is an overpopulation and hence pigs have been declared vermin, Nilgai has been declared vermin. When you declare them vermin, you can say from 1st of March to 15th of March. It's a narrow window of time and up to 200 Nilgai or up to 200 pigs. They will prescribe a number. And the unfortunate thing is you're allowed to kill it but not utilize it, which is an absolute waste. If you are deciding to kill it, you might as well make use of it. So that is as per law. The Chief Wildlife Warden on file has to justify what is the basis of taking that decision. But I don't think we should stand, because we are not handling that situation. The Chief Wildlife Warden has the rights to take those decisions. Human elephant, has it become political? Why has it not become political in Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh? You're a journalist located there. You should be best placed to answer that question than ask us this question. I don't think I have the knowledge or experience to answer that. But I think Sunita said something about the empowered citizenry in Kerala, clearly literate and very engaged. Maybe that's not the case there, but I have no intelligent answer.
where these things happen.
Then on whether climate change is having an impact on animal diet, it definitely is. I don't think we have data to...
It's not just climate change, it's also humans feeding animals.
No, that was a specific case of bears feeding on hotel food waste and things like that. And bear hunting,
But also Aditya's point in terms of buffer zone and tourism. If you could...
No, that's later. I mean, I'm going on. I'm got a list. I'm working through that. And you asked me to take notes, right? So on, see, an odd incident, a single observation doesn't normalize behavior. We don't really know the circumstances under which the sloth bear hunted. Was it a langur or a macaque, first of all? Do we know which monkey it was? Was it brown or gray? Mount Abu? Langur tha ya macaque tha? अरे यार जो यहाँ दिख रहा है macaque. Okay, so I have no... क्यों गंदा वादा नहीं है? Anyway, so but just because it hunted it once doesn't mean anything. I mean, we don't know the full circumstances of it, but it's an interesting point you make that during pandemic, there was no waste food and the bear would have been desperate because if it had been coming for years, got used to this kind of a thing. So it might have gone for it. Zonation, large-scale movement of elephants, habitat protection, Odisha. Now, Odisha, I didn't understand the question. You said there's a conflict daily. What is the solution? I mean, somebody has to research it and figure it out. I mean, I can't sit here and provide an answer for that. Merger of Project Tiger project, even Sukumar couldn't give an answer, so I have nothing to say. No version. I mean, the large-scale situation is wildlife conservation budgets are being slashed left, right, and center. This might well be one more step to that, but that's guessing. That's guessing.
Politics here. I was the chair of the Tiger Task Force, as you know. And as the chair of the Tiger Task Force, under my thing, the tiger budget went up very big time after my chairmanship, okay? And I made sure that there was a lot more money for tiger conservation. I also gave a lot more money for rehabilitation and resettlement of people and all the rest of it. A parallel group was set up. Are you a member of it? I know Sukumar was, Mahesh was, I think, on elephant conservation. And the same, it was set up a few years later as a task force on elephant conservation. And the idea was that that task force would also come up with a huge number, and then that money would also be secured. Now, the trouble is that they were not as strategic as me. I made sure before I released the report that I got a sign on by the Prime Minister. I also got an agreement that this money would be cleared. I also bugged the ministry to get the money cleared. So there is, Project Tiger is much richer, much more affluent. Each tiger has money. Elephant is not quite in the same state right now. And so who's going to share the proceeds? Why will anyone share? I mean, I think that's more the politics than anything else. It should be brought together, in my view. All animals should be brought together because it's all about habitat conservation. You should disband Project Tiger, Project Elephant, Project Whale, Project Dolphin. Everything should be together. But that's not going to happen.
How can conflict be controlled when projects destroy habitat? That's a theme that came through several questions. I think Rishika asked a pointed question and Gaurav also asked a pointed question. Clearly, I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? You destroy habitats, you will have consequences. So I don't know what more can I say on that. All this compensation for afforestation and all of that is hogwash. You destroy evergreen forests in Nicobar and plant in Aravallis. You are destroying Nicobar, you're destroying Aravallis also. Yeah. You're not compensating anything. Then impacts of tourism, carrying capacity. There have been studies. NTCA also has guidelines, but I think these guidelines are observed in breach. Money is pretty big, not just in the density of tourism, but the kind of tourism that happens.
Conservationists in the business of tourism.
Possible. I'm not disagreeing. Well, conservationists, like politicians, come in all shades and sizes. No, so then bears and biryani, please do not make this adventure tourism. It is not good either for bears or for tourists. These are black bears or brown bears, I don't know, likely to be black bears, but black bear, no, sloth bears, Kashmir. These are going to be large, dangerous animals. One day or the other, they will lash out at people. Don't. And it's not good for bears. Biryanis are not good for bears. So don't encourage it at all. Elephant, sugarcane, fair compensation, insurance, foolproof corridors. Foolproof corridors, I've answered. This sugarcane compensation, if the state has elephants, clearly the forest department will have to bring in some way of providing relief to the damage that they incur. Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to beg forgiveness of all the three other panelists. If you want to add anything to which, I mean, what a brilliant list Ravi did. So thank you so much, Ravi, for being such a conscientious student and helping us to. So, Ankila, anything you want to add? Anything one question that you feel that Ravi did not answer properly?
I think he made such detailed notes, he must have deliberately left it out for me. I think the question on invasive species in Periyar and Munnar, no, absolutely. I think focus of conservation, whether it's tigers or elephants, has been on the numbers of these animals. So, if a forest has 70 tigers, then it's doing great. What we haven't looked at is the overall habitat, and I think that's been touched upon. But more and more, I think we're realizing that habitats are being degraded by invasive species, and a lot of animals are moving out in search of food. So, Kotagiri, you have Gaur walking down the street. People are linking it to the degradation of forests in the Nilgiris. We've seen that in Karnataka. We've seen that even in Kutch with the prosopis and the wild ass. And just a small point on the politicization of this issue, Kerala, of course, but even in Karnataka, the forest department is under great political pressure now to large-scale removal of invasive species because of the human.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask you to keep your answer for the session, because one of the biggest questions that has been raised is the diversion issues, forest diversion issues. And that's the FCA amendment, which you will come to. So just keep it for that, unless there's something very quick, very, very quick.
So there was a question about elephant moving from neighboring states to Chhattisgarh, and I was doing a study 10 years ago. So, you know, Chhattisgarh never had elephants. It is reported that due to minings in Orissa, they're displaced from Orissa and they're moving towards the western side. And they may reach the, I think, Gujarat border by next 10, 20 years. So sorry. So let me just make some few quick points. You're all journalists. So please, sir, let me focus. There's few things I want to tell you. As a journalist, you should focus in your areas. One is this, there's a concept called eco-sensitive zones. Okay, and this is not part of a PPT. So basically, there's Supreme Court direction, there are many MOF guidelines which says that buffer areas has to be declared as eco-sensitive zones across all the protected areas, Sanctuary National Park. I did a study. I went to do a field visit also. I found 60% of the areas are 0 kilometers, zero. And the reasons are interstate borders. When the guideline clearly says, when the interstate border, you have to talk to the state, you have to make sure the corridors are protected. But what we're doing, as Supreme Court also endorsed this view. Okay, so this kind of things, you know, you have to see.
You have to. Richard, I'm going to leave you to chair the next session, and you'll have everything to say in the next session. Okay, I want to just, okay. So I just want to say this has been a very interesting session, but what it tells me is a few things that I want to highlight. One, I think beyond the coexistence, which is clearly going to be very important to acknowledge, there is a conflict, which we also need to acknowledge. And I know you do so. I'm not, I think the conversation has brought us to this, is what I'm saying. There is a conflict. My concern is that that conflict could spiral out of control, and that it could become something in which you create more enemies of people against animals. And that it'll create also a class difference between the poor who are being hit and the rich who want to go and see the animals as tourism. And that could actually end up in destroying a lot of what everyone, including, has worked to build a very clear Indian paradigm in which you have always treated people as being part of the solution rather than something in which they will be kept out. So we have to acknowledge the conflict. Everywhere I go, I see huge questions that are raised. I went to Nilgiris. Everyone there told me about how they're leaving farming because of the wild animal attacks. I hear this from any other place. It's really affecting farmers. Now, yes, habitat fragmentation is a very big issue. There is an issue of the institutions and the disabling of our institution to take proper decisions and balanced decisions. But no decision in this country is going to mean that there is going to be no habitat fragmentation. Let's be very clear. There is going to be habitat fragmentation, and you will have to deal with the question of animals, wildlife, coexistence. As the chair of the Tiger Task Force, I came up with a clear formula talking about the need for protection, increased protection, the need for creating core areas, exclusion zones where only tigers are allowed, the need for coexistence, which is within the corridors where people get compensated, people get advantage of living in the corridors because they need to be told that they are actually doing the nation a service, which is your question. Because if we cannot do conservation on the backs of poor people, we have to get them a benefit from the conservation. They have to benefit from protection that happens in the country. And then the larger agenda of forest management. So those are the issues that are there. The question that you asked, Jaideep, in terms of the state level, that the state should be compensated. You know, 10 years ago, under the Finance Commission, under pressure from Madhya Pradesh, there was an agreement that the state would be compensated for the forest wealth that it had. It was called a forest compensation that was given. Over the years, that got negated, diluted, usurped. It became part of the general fund of the state. In the last Finance Commission, that has been removed. So instead of the idea being that the state would get the money and would go to the communities which were protecting the forest area so that they would get the benefit of conservation, the state made it part of a general fund, and then now there is nothing. So I think it's important for us to understand how much of our conservation history has gone, where it has gone, and the fact that we will have to keep this conversation going, because otherwise, my fear is you will really divide people between the lovers of animals and the rest who basically see them as a nuisance. Last point, Down to Earth had the courage to do a story. And I say courage because the last time we reported from Abhi's work on rabies in dogs, we got hate mail to a level which is unbelievable. We continued to do a story on pigeons, monkeys, and dogs in urban areas, and how we needed to talk about the fact that this has now become a problem out of hand, and what do we do about it? The kind of hate mail we got, the kind of abuse we got, the kind of calls I got as the editor telling me nothing less than rape and pillage would happen to us. We would be burnt to the ground for raising the issue of dogs. Okay? I think that is doing disservice to conservation. I said that at the end of the webinar where there was so much abuse. And I tell you, Vani is one brave man who's still at it. Okay? Abhi is still one brave man. Otherwise, it's something that our attitude also is, "Are chodo yaar, kya lena dena? Kutta billi ka kissa hai, chhod do." But it is not something we can leave. We have to have a public discourse, however dirty and filthy the other side may be. We cannot deteriorate to their level, but we cannot not talk about this. Okay? So thank you very much. There's tea outside. Come back in 10 minutes.
12 minutes.
12 minutes.
It pops up on the screen.
And rest sources are here.